The House Housing Oversight Subcommittee hearing room fell dead silent as Representative Hakeem Jeffries leaned into his microphone, his voice slicing through the air with practiced control. "Oh, Assemblyman Mamdani, you talk a lot about helping the working class. But what exactly have you done? Oh, besides stirring things up on Twitter." The attack was swift, calculated, and crafted to embarrass the Democratic Socialists from Queens in front of millions watching the live stream. But what happened next would catch everyone in that room off guard. Zohran Mamdani did not blink. He did not look rattled. Instead, he smiled down, the kind of slow, unshaken smile that makes establishment politicians suddenly uneasy. Because what Jeffries did not realize was that Mamdani had been waiting for this moment. He had the facts, he had the receipts, and he was about to deliver a response that would leave the House Minority Leader speechless and viral within minutes. This was not just another ideological disagreement. It was about to become a seismic moment that would redefine both of their careers and show America exactly what happens when moral clarity meets political calculation. Before we dive into this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Because what you're about to witness is one of the most jaw-dropping political exchanges in recent history. Now let's talk to see how Zohran Mamdani turned the tables on Hakeem Jeffries in the most spectacular way imaginable. The stage was set for what would become one of the most talked about confrontations on Capitol Hill. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, seated confidently behind his nameplate, believed he had an easy target in the first-term Democratic Socialists from Queens. But he was about to discover that underestimating Zohran Mamdani would be the gravest political miscalculation of his career. The irony hung thick in the room. Here was Jeffries, a man who had spent years building his image as the pragmatic face of Democratic leadership, about to get thoroughly outmaneuvered by a grassroots organizer turned legislator who had spent his life fighting evictions and standing on picket lines. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. The Beltway insider versus the street-level activist. The polished centrist versus the unflinching progressive. The committee chair who played it safe versus the firebrand who came to challenge power. The hearing had been routine up to that point. Discussions of housing subsidies, zoning reforms, the usual Washington back and forth. But tension had been building between Jeffries and Mamdani for weeks, largely fueled by their opposing views on how to address America's housing crisis and its disproportionate impact on working-class communities of color. Jeffries, as the highest-ranking Black Democrat in the House, often clashed with Democratic Socialists like Mamdani over strategy and tone. 2 weeks earlier, Mamdani had gone viral during an MSNBC interview, sharply criticizing Jeffries' housing record and labeling him a landlord, his favorite Democrat. The Minority Leader Artemahanas office had responded with press releases and off-the-record smears. But Mamdani did now back down. Instead, he doubled down, posting voting records and campaign finance data for all to see. The tension had been simmering ever since, both sides circling, waiting for the right moment to settle the score. And now, without warning, it had arrived. Cameras were rolling, CNN was live, Twitter was already watching. To understand just how explosive this moment was, you need to know who these two men are and what they represent in the evolving landscape of American politics. Hakeem Jeffries had long enjoyed a reputation as the establishment's rising star. The first Black man to lead a party caucus in the House, he symbolized the Democratic Party's ability to be both diverse and disciplined. Born in Brooklyn, Jeffries built his brand on moderation, coalition building, and sharp messaging. He knew how to win over Wall Street donors in the morning and deliver civil rights speeches by the afternoon. To many, he was the future of respectable, center-left politics. But critics saw something else, a politician more concerned with protecting corporate interests than challenging them, a man who could quote Biggie Smalls in hearings, but consistently voted to preserve landlord protections in military budgets. They accused him of using identity as a shield against real accountability, a gatekeeper who looked like the people but governed for the donors. Over time, Jeffries had grown comfortable in his role as the party's enforcer, fluent in centrist talking points, immune to internal criticism, and rarely challenged on live television. He assumed his institutional status was unshakable, but across the aisle, quietly flipping through notes and waiting for his memento, was Zohran Mamdani. That comfort had made Jeffries overconfident, perhaps even arrogant, about his ability to swat away any challenger who dared question his methods. After all, in his world, dissent was usually managed behind closed doors, not televised. But across the dais sat Zohran Mamdani, and he embodied everything establishment Democrats found unsettling. A former housing counselor, tenant organizer, and the son of Ugandan Indian immigrants, Mamdani had been elected to the New York State Assembly in 2020 as part of a surging wave of Democratic Socialists who did not just talk about justice, they organized for it. At just 31 years old, he had already made a name for himself as a fearless advocate for working-class tenants, immigrants, and the unhoused. Xiao Timnapa gone viral multiple times, not for stunts, but for searing moral clarity, whether on the assembly floor or during community protests against illegal evictions. His grassroots background had trained him to think fast under pressure and dismantle bureaucratic talking points with precision. Mamdani represented a district in Queens that was proudly working class, majority immigrant, and tired of being told to wait their turn. He ultimately won his seat not by currying favor with party bosses, but by knocking doors, rejecting corporate donations, and promising to fight unapologetically for those who had never been truly represented. He had no patience for false civility, and even less for being lectured by Democrats who'd spent more time appeasing Wall Street than confronting it. What made Mamdani particularly dangerous to entrenched figures like Jeffries was his trifecta of strength: deep organizing roots, digital fluency, and an unshakable bond with his community. Unlike many lawmakers who seemed insulated from the crises they legislated on, Mamdani had lived it out standing with tenants facing eviction, delivering food during the pandemic, translating legal notices for working-class immigrants being railroaded by the system. He had a reputation for relentless preparation. His team came to every hearing armed with policy binders, case data, and questions crowdsourced from constituents. He understood that as a Democratic Socialist, a Muslim, and the son of immigrants, he ought to be held to a different standard, expected to justify his presence while others coasted on seniority. But that was not intimidation. It was motivation. He made sure he was the most informed person in every room, not for show, for survival. This confrontation was about more than two Democrats disagreeing. It was about two clashing philosophies for how marginalized communities should engage with politics. Jeffries stood for incrementalism, build relationships, stay inside the system, avoid disruption, focus on optics, be respectable. Mamdani stood for transformation, confront the system, demand structural change, and never apologize for being bold. The hearing room was packed out policy aides, press, housing advocates, and a few DSA members who had managed to secure gallery seats. Everyone sensed something was coming. The buzz had started early in the morning, with whispers about the growing friction between the establishment's chosen leader and the insurgent socialists with a loyal following. For Jeffries, this was supposed to be routine, a casual swipe at an upstart, reinforce his dominance, maybe clip a moment or two for MSNBC. He had the rank, the resume, and the reverence of his colleagues. For Mamdani, this was something else entirely. It was about drawing a line in the sand. It was about sending a message, not just to Jeffries, but to every young organizer watching. We don't know to back down. The stakes extended far beyond the room. As Democrats scrambled to energize a fractured base and reassert credibility on economic justice, this exchange would be watched like a litmus test. Party strategists, donors, and national media would all be taking notes. Both men were under pressure just from opposite ends of the party. Party leadership had grown quietly frustrated with Jeffries' tone deafness toward the party's growing left flank. Despite his polished image, he was struggling to counter the insurgent energy sweeping across working-class districts. His national ambitions were real, but this hearing was being seen as a proving ground for whether he could still control the narrative. Mamdani, meanwhile, had become a rising star among progressives. Hiaut turned down multiple offers to run for Congress, instead focusing. But this was his first major moment on the national stage. His allies were watching closely to see if he could translate activist fire into legislative force, especially when standing toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful Democrats in the country. But neither Jeffries nor anyone in the hearing room was ready for what Mamdani was about to unleash. The exchange began during what was supposed to be a routine discussion about community development, financial institutions, or CDFIs. Jeffries had been calmly questioning witnesses about the effectiveness of certain federal funding streams, until he abruptly turned toward Mamdani, seated a few chairs away. "Oh, you know what, Assemblyman Mamdani?" Jeffries began, his voice adopting the paternalistic tone of someone used to not being interrupted. "Oh, yeah, I would have been listening to you talk about helping tenants in low-income families for months now. But let me ask you directly, Al, what have you actually accomplished besides stirring things up on social media?" The question landed like a slap. Committee hearings rarely saw this kind of direct confrontation, especially between members of the same party. Staffers froze. Press leaned forward. C-SPAN caught every flicker of expression. Jeffries leaned back in his chair, confident he had delivered a calculated blow, one that would reinforce the narrative of Mamdani as all ideology and no impact. But what he did not know was that Mamdani had been waiting for this ambush, and was ready to turn it into a moment that no one watching would ever forget. The question hit like a thunderclap. Congressional hearings rarely featured this kind of direct confrontation between members of the same party, especially not with cameras rolling and the nation watching. Staffers froze mid-gesture. Reporters began hammering away at their keyboards. The C-SPAN feed caught every flicker of tension in the room. But Jeffries wasn't finished. He leaned back in his chair, exuding the smug confidence of a man who believed he had just delivered a clean political kill shot. "You've been in public service for decades," he said, waving his hand dismissively. The past legislation that actually improved people owed him his lives. But all I see from you, Assemblyman, are slogans, tweets, and TikToks. Where is the substance? The condescension was unmistakable. This was not just ideological sparring. It was a public questioning of another lawmaker's competence and credibility. In the unspoken rules of congressional etiquette, this was the verbal equivalent of a punch to the jaw. Jeffries' tone dripped with the arrogance of someone who had spent too long surrounded by applause, someone who believed that seniority was synonymous with superiority and that younger progressives should know their place. But what he did not realize was that he had just walked straight into a trap, one that had caught many before him, confusing visibility with vanity and mistaking social media fluency for a lack of depth. Because what Jeffries failed to understand was that Zohran Mamdani, to his online presence, was now a substitute for hard work. It was the amplifier for it. Mamdani's expression did not flinch, but those watching closely noticed a subtle shift. His jaw clenched, and his pen was set down with careful finality. He lifted his eyes and met Jeffries' stare directly. The room fell silent, waiting. Still, Jeffries kept digging, apparently mistaking Mamdani's silence for intimidation. He pressed on, emboldened. Chairman, with respect, Jeffries said, waving off an attempt to move forward with questioning. This is important. He turned back toward Mamdani. We're here to solve real problems. Housing instability, income inequality, immigrant displacement. The people in your district are struggling. They don't need a social media celebrity. They need a legislator who delivers. And there it was, the line he never should have crossed. Calling someone unqualified was one thing, but suggesting they did not care about their own constituents, that they were performative, unserious, or self-serving, that was personal. That was character assassination, and everyone in the room knew it. The tension crackled like static electricity. Staffers from both sides were furiously texting. Aides to Jeffries looked panicked, realizing their boss might have just walked into a firestorm. Mamdani, Tim's team, though silent, were steady, knowing this moment had been anticipated, prepared for. Meanwhile, social media was already in chaos. The C-SPAN clip had hit Twitter in seconds. Jeffries versus Mamdani was trending before the exchange was even finished. Influencers were typing at warp speed. Political commentators were choosing sides. Establishment-friendly accounts praised Jeffries for putting the DSA on notice. But the progressive internet? It was already building a legend. He does know what he just triggered. One tweet read, Zohran Mamdani about to go full Queens mode. The comment sections flooded with fire emojis, popcorn gifs, and captions like, he chose the wrong one. Still, Mamdani had now said a word, and now his silence was becoming part of the story. Some wondered, had Jeffries actually rattled him? Was the insurgent star not ready for the bright lights? But those who knew Mamdani, organizers, activists, policy nerds, were now worried. They knew what was coming. Jeffries, misreading the quiet as triumph, went in for what he thought would be the final blow. Look, Zohran, you're not trying to be unkind, he said, adopting an almost patronizing tone. But if you want to be taken seriously in this institution, you need to move past performative politics. You might actually learn something from those of us who have been in the trenches for a while. The irony was brutal. Here was a man who had spent his political life in well-funded offices and gala banquets, lecturing a tenant organizer who had fought slumlords in housing court, delivered groceries to elderly constituents during a pandemic, and stood on picket lines with cab drivers in the snow. And while Jeffries continued talking, Mamdani, calm and deliberate, was scrolling through his phone. Not for tweets, for facts. His staff had anticipated this very attack. They had prepared a dossier, legislation sponsored, tenant cases resolved, housing programs expanded, numbers that could now be spun away. This was no improvisation. This was preparation meeting opportunity. As Jeffries delivered one last sanctimonious jab, the committee chair again tried to intervene. Let's return to the witness questioning. But it was too late. Mamdani adjusted the microphone, leaned in slowly, and for the first time since the exchange began, opened his mouth to speak. What happened next would shift the momentum of the hearing, and the trajectory of both men's careers. If we could please return to questioning the witnesses, the chair tried once more, but it was too late. Zohran Mamdani was ready. He leaned forward, slowly adjusting the microphone. His voice, when it came, was steady, clear, and devastating. Well, Leader Jeffries, since you asked what I accomplished, Mamdani began, let me tell you exactly what this loudmouth socialist has been doing while you've been busy being the corporate wingout of his favorite brown face. The room gasped. In the formal world of House discourse, accusing a fellow member, so especially one of your own party, of tokenism was like lighting a stick of political dynamite. But Mamdani was just getting started. The wording was deliberate, razor sharp. By calling Jeffries a corporate token, Mamdani was now not just insulting him, he was challenging the very foundation of Jeffries' own political rise. He was saying out loud what many progressives had whispered for years, that Jeffries' value to party leadership was his policy genius, but his reliability to protect the status quo, and his willingness to be the face of diversity while defending the interests of real estate, tech, and Wall Street. The accusation hung in the room like smoke from a just-fired cannon. Everyone present knew they were witnessing a moment that would define both men, perhaps for years to come. Let's talk about substance, since you brought it up, Mamdani said, now locking eyes with Jeffries. In my first year in office, I co-sponsored 58 bills focused on tenant protections, public housing investment, and expanding healthcare for undocumented immigrants. That TM's more than you sponsored in your first 3 years in Albany. But I suppose you were too busy figuring out how to please the Rebbiani donors to actually help renters. Jeffries' confident smirk had already started to disappear. This was now meant the response he expected from someone he thought he could corner with a snide jab. This was now meant theater. This was war. And Mamdani had come armed. Oh, but Latautma's get specific representative. Mamdani continued, pulling out his phone. The move, casual and confident. We stopped 21 evictions. The Tautma is not content. The Tautma's work. Tell me, Congressman Al, how many evictions did your office stop last month? Do you even know? The question landed like a challenge hurled across the aisle. Jeffries looked ready to respond, but Mamdani pressed on. Oh, and since you mentioned the challenges in my district, poverty, overcrowded schools, wage theft. Let me tell you what I owe to be actual done about them, instead of giving donor-approved speeches about opportunity and bootstrap capitalism. What followed was a masterclass in dismantling a political opponent. Mamdani began listing his accomplishments like precise blows from a blade. I secured $6.8 million in state funding for public schools in District 36. I helped expand legal aid services for tenants fighting illegal evictions. I co-sponsored a bill capping rent increases in all state-funded shelters. I launched a community health pilot that serves undocumented families who otherwise be excluded from basic care. Each point hit harder than the last. Jeffries, who had begun the exchange with visible confidence, now sat motionless, struggling to find footing. Oh, you came after my record, Congressman. Oh, Mamdani said, leaning in. Oh, but I came prepared. Then his tone changed, sharpened, intensified. What really bothers me about your little lecture, Al, he said, is how you sit there on your throne of corporate endorsements and dare to question how I engage with my constituents. You mock my TikToks, my tweets, like I eat tautms all vanity. But you forget that for working-class immigrants, for first-gen kids in Jackson Heights and Coronaba, that Ottomans, how they find out how to apply for housing aid or renew their SNAP or show up to their tenants' association. He paused. The silence was electric. When I post a reel explaining how to fight back against landlord harassment, it does not get 100 likes, so it gets 100,000. That outcome is not vanity. That outcome is reach. That outcome is power. And if you don't understand that, maybe you ought to be spent too long talking to donors and not enough time talking to tenants. The room was dead quiet now. You could hear the rustling of a reporter flipping to a new notebook page. Aides staring wide-eyed, members leaning forward. Even the C-SPAN camera slowly zoomed in. But Mamdani was now finished. You have the audacity to question my commitment to my people, he said, voice now dropping to a calm, cutting whisper. When you have spent the last decade carrying water for industries that actively displace, exploit, and erase communities that look like ours. Jeffries tried to cut in. Assemblyman Mamdani, not finished, Mamdani said coldly. That line cut through the room like a blade. You want to talk about your record, the Tautmas talk, he said. You ought to have been in elected office for over a decade. And what do you have to show for it? You voted against good cause eviction protections. You blocked public housing expansions. You opposed single-payer health care in the name of AI market solutions. You talk about lifting people up, but your donors get richer while our people get priced out, burned out, and left behind. Jeffries' own face was flushed now, half anger, half disbelief. But Mamdani remained calm, clear, unrelenting. You stood in front of cameras and called yourself a bridge builder, but your voting record shows you spent your entire career building bridges for billionaires to walk over the rest of us. With that, Mamdani leaned back in his chair. The damage was done, and the entire hearing room, the press gallery, and the digital world outside knew it. Each vote you cast against progressive policies landed like a hammer blow. Mamdani was systematically dismantling Jeffries' credibility as someone who claimed to represent working class and immigrant interests while repeatedly voting against legislation that would have helped those very communities. Oh, you stood on debate stages during your rise through the party and spoke about unity. Zohran Mamdani said, voice steady but resolute. Oh, but your voting record shows you have spent your entire career dividing people, choosing party loyalty over the lives of your constituents. But Jeffries out him, face reddened, frustration clear, as he searched for a way to respond. But Mamdani held complete control of the moment. Oh, and then you have the audacity to sit here and question my qualifications? His voice rose, not in anger, but with the righteous indignation that resonates with those who have long been underestimated and dismissed. Leader Jeffries, before I came to the assembly, I was a tenant organizer and community advocate. I have spent my career fighting for people the system tried to discard. I have stood alongside tenants in housing courts defending their rights, while you voted to confirm judges who would undermine those protections. The personal contrast was stark. While Jeffries had climbed the political ladder by appealing to establishment donors and centrist voters, Mamdani had spent his career on the front lines fighting for justice. Also, when you asked me what Autumn accomplished, Mamdani continued, is what Autumn accomplished. Autumn never forgotten where I came from. Autumn never sold out my community for political gain. And Autumn never been so desperate for acceptance from people who don't respect me that Autumn to throw my own people under the bus. The final blow landed with such precision that several people in the room actually gasped. Mamdani had just accused Jeffries on camera and in public of betraying his own community for political advancement. Jeffries finally found his voice, shaky with anger and embarrassment. Oh, Assemblyman Mamdani, that is completely inappropriate. What inappropriate, Leader Jeffries? Mamdani shot back. Oh, is it inappropriate for a brown man in your position to use establishment talking points to attack a progressive who is actually doing the work? What was inappropriate is you questioning my qualifications when you, never bothered to learn what I actually do. What was inappropriate is this entire performance you just put on. Mamdani leaned back in his chair, having delivered a response so complete and devastating that Jeffries was left speechless. The room remained silent for several long seconds as everyone processed what they had just witnessed. The committee chairman, sensing that things had gone far beyond what was appropriate for a hearing, quickly called for a recess. But it was too late. The damage was done, and the video was already going viral. The immediate aftermath of Zohran Mamdani's takedown of Hakeem Jeffries was unlike anything Washington had seen in years. Within minutes, social media exploded with a force that even seasoned political observers found surprising. The hashtag #Mamdani destroyed Jeffries was trending on Twitter within 15 minutes. The original C-SPAN clip was shared thousands of times within the first hour as political commentators, activists, and regular citizens weighed in on what they had just witnessed. Progressive Twitter was ablaze. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, Oh, this is what happens when you underestimate someone who actually does the work. Zohran just gave a masterclass on responding to bad faith attacks. The tweet garnered over 200,000 likes in 2 hours. The Shade Room posted a clip with the caption, Assemblyman Zohran said, not today, tomorrow. It went viral on Instagram, introducing Mamdani as takedown to a whole new audience of young, politically engaged social media users who might not normally pay attention to legislative hearings. TikTok exploded with reaction videos. Young activists, especially from immigrant communities, embraced Mamdani's response, creating videos breaking down why his comeback was so effective. One TikTok user explained, he did just defend himself. He exposed the entire game. That outma's how you handle someone trying to come for you. Conservative social media was noticeably quieter, with many establishment-friendly influencers simply pretending the exchange had not happened. Those who did comment mostly criticized Mamdani's tone rather than engage with the substance of his response, only making it more obvious that he had won decisively. Within hours, every major news outlet was covering the story. CNN ran the full exchange with the headline, Progressive Assemblyman delivers blistering response to party leader misattack. MSNBC to MSNBC. Joy Reid dedicated an entire segment to the exchange, calling it a perfect example of how a new generation of Democratic leaders refuses to be intimidated. Even Fox News covered the story, albeit focusing mostly on whether Mamdani's response was appropriate for a legislative hearing. But the fact they covered it at all showed just how big the story had become. The Washington Post published an analysis piece examining the broader implications of the exchange for progressive leadership within the Democratic Party. The New York Times ran a profile on Mamdani, noting that he had emerged as a powerful voice for a new generation of progressive lawmakers. Political podcasts could now get enough of this. Conservative podcasts mostly ignored the story entirely, which spoke volumes about how badly it had gone for Jeffries. Jeffries' team immediately went into full damage control mode after the hearing. His communications director issued a statement expressing regret that the discussion had become personal and claiming respect for Assemblyman Mamdani and his passion for his constituents. But the damage was already done. The next evening, Jeffries appeared on Fox News trying to reframe the exchange as an example of progressive hostility and an inability to engage in civil discourse. The interview was widely panned, with critics noting Jeffries seemed defensive and unprepared to answer questions about his own voting record. Several conservative commentators who had initially supported Jeffries' attack began distancing themselves once they saw how thoroughly Mamdani dismantled his arguments. One prominent Republican strategist speaking anonymously told Politico, Hakeem really stepped in at this time. You can now attack women misqualifications if you have done your homework on what they actually accomplished. Jeffries' national ambitions, already on life support after his failed 2024 leadership bid, took another serious hit. Political insiders noted that the exchange revealed Jeffries as someone who could be easily outmaneuvered by a first-term assemblyman, raising questions about his effectiveness as a national leader. For Zohran Mamdani, the exchange was a career-defining moment that established him as a major figure in progressive politics. His office reported receiving over 10,000 supportive emails within 24 hours, including dozens from fellow lawmakers. Nancy Pelosi tweeted her support, calling Mamdani a rising star who represents the best of our new generation, prepared, principled, and unafraid to speak truth to power. Fundraising emails featuring clips from the exchange raised over $500,000 for progressive candidates in just 2 days. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee immediately began featuring Mamdani in their promotional materials, recognizing his power as a draw for donors and volunteers. Speaking invitations poured in from across the country. Within a week, Mamdani had been invited to speak at over 30 events, from college campuses to party fundraisers. His team had to hire additional staff just to manage the media requests. The exchange between Jeffries and Mamdani highlighted several broader trends in American politics that went far beyond just these two individuals. First, it demonstrated the growing confidence and skill of a new generation of progressive Democrats. Mamdani's response showed that younger politicians are no longer content to simply absorb establishment attacks. They are prepared to fight back hard and effectively. Second, it exposed the limits of the Democratic establishment's strategy of elevating centrist leaders as shields against charges of disconnection. When Jeffries attacked Mamdani, he could now hide behind seniority or status. Mamdani was equally qualified and far better prepared. Third, it showed how social media has transformed political communication. Mamdani's savvy use of digital platforms was no liability. As Jeffries suggested, it was a superpower that allowed him to reach and mobilize people in ways traditional politicians could not. Political scientists quickly analyzed the exchange as a sign of evolving political discourse. Dr. Melanie Price, a professor at Prairie View A&M University, noted, "What we saw was a clash between old-school political tactics and new-school political communication." Mamdani understood that in the social media age, authenticity and preparation matter more than seniority and polite deferral. In the weeks following the exchange, several developments confirmed its lasting impact on both men's careers. Hakeem Jeffries' influence within the party noticeably diminished. He was removed from several high-profile speaking engagements and rumors circulated that party leadership was losing confidence in his ability to effectively communicate their message. His poll numbers in New York showed their first significant decline in years. Zohran Mamdani, meanwhile, was elevated to several high-profile committee assignments and became a regular guest on political talk shows. Democratic leadership clearly recognized that he had proven himself capable of defending the party and its values under intense pressure. The exchange also reshaped how political attacks are conducted going forward. Several Republican strategists privately noted that the Mamdani-Jeffries exchange highlighted the risks of underestimating younger progressive Democrats, especially politicians of color, who had proven themselves in activism and community leadership before stepping into office. Beyond politics, the exchange became a cultural touchstone about respect, preparation, and standing up to bullies. It was widely shared outside political circles, inspiring many as an example of how to respond effectively when someone tries to diminish your accomplishments. Young activists, especially from immigrant and working-class communities, embraced Mamdani as a role model. Many cited his response as a blueprint for handling workplace discrimination, condescension, and systemic bias. The phrase, "Oh yeah, I'm not finished," which Mamdani used to cut off Jeffries' attempted interruption, quickly became a popular meme and rallying cry. Educational institutions began using the exchange as a case study in effective communication and political strategy. Several law schools added it to their curricula as a prime example of how legal training and grassroots organizing could be successfully combined in political contexts. Looking back months later, political observers agreed this moment marked a turning point in American political discourse. Zohran Mamdani had demonstrated that preparation, authenticity, and strategic thinking could overcome traditional advantages like seniority and institutional power. For Hakeem Jeffries, the exchange was a stark reminder that political attacks can spectacularly backfire when poorly planned and executed. His attempt to diminish Mamdani had instead elevated the younger politician while diminishing himself. But most importantly, the exchange showed that American politics was changing. The old rules of deference to seniority and polite discourse were yielding to a more direct, authentic form of political communication that resonates with voters tired of political games and empty rhetoric. As one Democratic strategist put it, Mamdani did not just win that exchange, he showed what the future of progressive politics looks like: prepared, passionate, and unafraid to fight back. The story of Hakeem Jeffries' attack on Zohran Mamdani's most epic response will be remembered as a defining moment in modern American politics, when preparation met opportunity and the underdog delivered a knockout punch that left his opponent speechless and the nation talking. If you enjoyed this incredible political showdown, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you never miss these amazing moments. What do you think of Zohran Mamdani's response? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to share this with anyone who needs to see how to handle political bullies. Hit that notification bell so you are the first to know when we drop our next explosive political story. This story proves that in politics, preparation beats position every single time. When you come for someone, you better make sure you've done your homework, because if you have you might just get the education of a lifetime on live television. Zohran Mamdani did not just defend himself that day. He showed the entire country what real political leadership looks like in the 21st century. This exchange also serves as a perfect reminder that in our social media age, every political moment can become a defining moment. One well-prepared response can change careers, shift narratives, and inspire millions of people tired of seeing bullies get away with their tactics. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up and fight back with facts, preparation, and the courage to speak truth to power.